We're going to be reading this first letter by Srila Prabhupada to Mahatma Gandhi. We share the screen so you can see. If you'd like to participate on Facebook, or if you're watching this on Facebook or Zoom, you can send me a message and then I'll get you in the Zoom. You can read also. So here we have, what do we have here? We have the Bhaktivedanta Archives. This is the Bhaktivedanta Archive. You can see here. This is all of Srila Prabhupada's books, letters, conversations. You can see here Bhagavatam, lectures, conversations. But today we're focusing on the correspondence, letters. Srila Prabhupada wrote 6,341 letters which have been archived, meaning that they have a copy of that at archives in Sandy Ridge, I think. So the first letter was to Mahatma Gandhi, Srila Prabhupada's first letter in 1947. Letter to Mahatma Gandhi, July 12th, 1947. Srila Prabhupada to Gandhi. My dear friend Mahatma Gandhi, please accept my respectful namaskar. I am your unknown friend, but I had to write to you at times and again, although you have never cared to reply. I sent you my papers back to Godhead, but your secretaries told me that you have very little time to read the letters and much less for reading the magazines. I asked you for an interview with you, but your busy secretaries never cared to reply this. Anyway, as I'm your very old friend, although unknown to you, I am writing to you in order to bring you to the rightful position deserved by you. As a sincere friend, I must not deviate from my duty towards a friend like you, like your good self. So as we know, I am an unknown friend. Actually, Srila Prabhupada was a follower of Mahatma Gandhi at one time, before he met his spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So, Srila Prabhupada says that in his conversations with his disciples that back in the 1920s, growing up and going to college, he was a student of Mahatma Gandhi. He was in the same line of thought as Mahatma Gandhi that we need to free India and then we can talk about spirituality. So then Srila Prabhupada, I'm your unknown friend. This is what he means. Although you have never cared to reply. So Srila Prabhupada had written to him many times because he was a follower of Gandhi at one time. Then he became a follower of his spiritual master. What is his name? Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Then then Srila Prabhupada started writing Back to Godhead magazines, and then he sent copies of the Back to Godhead magazines to Mahatma Gandhi, and then his secretaries said that Mahatma Gandhi doesn't have time to read any magazines or letters. Srila Prabhupada wanted to interview Mahatma Gandhi, and he wanted to bring glory to him. Srila Prabhupada wanted he's saying, a rightful position deserved by you. So Prabhupada wanted to have a discussion with him and then tell him about the importance of spiritual life and the Bhagavad Gita. As a sincere friend, I must not deviate from my duty towards a friend like a good self. So there you go, the first paragraph. I tell you as a sincere friend that you must retire from active politics if you do not desire to die an inglorious death. You have 125 years to live as you have desired to live. But if you die an inglorious death, it is not worth the honor and prestige that you have obtained during the course of your present life were not possible to be obtained by anyone else within the living memory. So Mahatma Gandhi, according to Srila Prabhupada, got a lot of importance and fame, but Srila Prabhupada had a different vision. He wanted Mahatma Gandhi to take up Bhagavad Gita, the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. which he's going to talk about at the end. Srila Prabhupada says, to be obtained by anyone else within the living memory. So a lot of people became followers of Gandhi, especially this Martin Luther King and other people, because at that time everyone was fighting for equality, um, all this uh, materialistic and humanistic, philanthropic agendas all these people had. But you must know that all these honors and prestiges were false, inasmuch as they were created by the illusionary energy of Godhead called the Maya. So we all know all these temporary things related to how famous you are. It ends at the time of death. It finishes. By this falsity, I do not mean to say that your so many friends were false to you, nor you were false to them. Srila Prabhupada is saying they're actually spirit souls, they're not false. The soul, but this prestige and this Prabhupada says, what does it say here? Prestige and honor that stops at the time of death. By this falsity, I mean illusion, or in other words, the false friendships and honors obtained thereby, but were but creation of Maya, and therefore they are always temporary or false, as you may call it. But of none of your neither your but none of you, neither your friends nor yourself, knew the truth. That's pretty interesting. Prabhupada is saying that mm, you were so engrossed in this false, illusionary honor and prestige that you forgot that it's going to end at the time of death. All this honor, prestige, fame ends at the time of death when the body ceases to exist and the soul moves on to its next body. All that finishes. Neither your friends, Srila Prabhupada says here, neither your friends nor yourself knew this truth. Srila Prabhupada is talking about the nature of this material world. It's relative, it's relativity, it changes. Uh, Ultimately, our bodies are also changing from boyhood to youth to old age. We're somewhere in this line. At that time of death, everything ends. So family goes, all these bodily functions become useless because the soul is no longer present. So Srila Prabhupada is telling him all this. This is a letter to Mahatma Gandhi, and Srila Prabhupada is saying that, hey, all these things you've achieved, it's going to end at the time of death, when your body ceases to exist. Now, by the grace of God, that illusion is going to be cleared, and thus your faithful friends like Acharya Kripalani and others are accusing you for your inability at the present moment to give them any practical program of work as you happened to give them during your glorious days of non-cooperation movement. So all these people he had employed or were his friends, faithful friends, Prabhupada calls them, they are now accusing you for your inability at the present moment to give you any practical program of work. So because Gandhi's whole movement was a materialistic movement to get people free from this, from the British, meaning that to kick the British out, uh, it's temporary, it's falsity, it's illusion, it's relativity. Prabhupada is saying that all these things, even though you have achieved it now, because you have achieved it, and now people are still complaining. Now we have achieved this, now what? Hmm? So then Prabhupada says, you are also in a plight to find out a proper solution for the present political tangle created by your opponents. So Gandhi tried to get India free, but what happened? He got more entangled. Prabhupada is saying, you are also in a plight to find out a proper solution for the present political tangle created by your opponents. So who are his opponents? So Prabhupada will mention next. You should therefore take note of warning from your insufficient friend like me, that unless you retire timely from politics and engage yourself 100% in the preaching work of Bhagavad Gita, which is the real function of the Mahatmas, you shall have to meet with such inglorious deaths as Mussolini, Hitler's, Dojos, Churchill's, or Leonard George's met with. Wow. So, it's pretty interesting, huh? Prabhupada is giving him a warning that, hey, you have done all this, but still, your opponents have created a much bigger problem. What are you going to do about it? Hmm? Now it's time to retire. Unless you retire timely from politics and engage yourself 100% in preaching the work of Bhagavad Gita, which is the real function of the Mahatmas. So the Mahatmas, what is their real function? Well, preaching the work of Bhagavad Gita. If you don't, then what happens? Inglorious deaths as Mussolini, Hitler, and etc. This is pretty interesting. So here Srila Prabhupada says, you can very easily understand as to how some of your political enemies in the garb of friends, both Indian and English, have deliberately cheated you and have broken your heart by doing the same mischief for which you have struggled so hard for so many years. You wanted chiefly Hindu-Muslim unity in India, and they have tactfully managed to undo your work by creation of Pakistan and India separately. So Srila Prabhupada is saying that both the Indians and the English, they cheated Mahatma Gandhi. And then the British left India, but they split India into two countries, India and Pakistan. So when the British were in rule, I guess, Hindus and Muslims were living together in peace. But Gandhi wanted freedom. He wanted to kick out the British people from India. So the British left, but they divided India into two countries. It was originally India, now it is Pakistan and India, two separate countries. You wanted freedom for India, but they have given permanent dependence of India. So two countries, one country divided into two. You wanted to do something for the upliftment of the position of the Bhangis, but they're still rotting as Bhangis even though you are living in the Bhangi colony. So Mahatma Gandhi is trying to uplift this Bhangi colony. I guess he was living in the Bhangi colony, and he wanted to help them. And even though you are living in the Bhangi colony, they are all therefore, I just say position of Bhangis, but they're still rotting as Bhangis, even though you are living in the Bhangi colony. They are all therefore illusions, and when these things will be presented to you as they are, you must consider them as God sent. God has favored you by dissipating the illusions you have been hovering in, and by the same illusions you are nursing those ideas as truth. So you can see here, by artificial separation or non-spiritual, what do you call it? Non-spiritual teachings, you will only create more problems for the society, more problems for the world, and eventually you die. You must know that you are in the relative world, which is called by the sages as Dvaita, dual. Nothing is absolute here. Your ahimsa is always followed by himsa, as the light is followed by darkness, or the Father is followed by the Son. Nothing is absolute truth in this dual world. You do not know this, neither you have ever cared to know this from the right source, and therefore all your attempts to create such unity were followed by disunity and ahimsa. Ahimsa was followed by ahimsa. So in this A relative world, Prabhupada is saying everything is changing. You know, there's sunlight for X amount of hours, and there's darkness. Uh, there's non-violence, and there's violence. He tried to create unity between the Hindu and Muslims, but what he got? The disunity. The British left, and they divided India in 1947, Pakistan and India separate countries. So all of Gandhi's ideas eventually ended up, he became frustrated and he got shot and he died. So then let's read the last two paragraphs. But it is better late than never. Srila Prabhupada is saying it's better to take up spiritual life now, even though you have done everything improperly, you have understood things improperly, you have done it improperly. You must know now something about the absolute truth, the truth that, no, the truth with which you have been experimenting so long is relative. Relative truths are creations of the Daivi Maya, qualified by the three modes of material nature. Relative truth means that it's always changing. It's true today, false tomorrow. Uh, Spiritual knowledge is true now, true in the future, and always will be true. Just like I'm a spirit soul, you're a spirit soul, anyone who's watching this is a spirit soul, that will never change. Consciousness is the symptom of the soul. So whenever there's consciousness, that means the soul is present. So Gandhi never inquired to learn about the soul, and then Prabhupada goes into detail here. In the Katha Upanishad, it is ordered that one must approach the bona fide guru who is not only well versed in the scriptures of the world, but is also the self, the self. What are you saying, bro? In the Katha Upanishad, it is ordered that one must approach the bona fide guru who is not only well versed in all the scriptures of the world, but is also the realized soul in Brahman, the Absolute, in order to learn the science of the Absolute Truth. So, also it is instructed in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, verse 34. Prabhupada's the Sanskrit Krishna speaks. Tadvidhi paripatena paripashtena sevaya upadakshanti tadgyanam jnanas tattvadarshanaha. But I know that you never underwent such transcendental training except for some severe penances which you invented for your purpose, as you have invented so many things in the course of experimenting with the relative truths. So you see here, Prabhupada is saying that you did all these things out of speculation, not from the Vedic scriptural point of view. He did so many speculative things, trying to bring the Hindus and Muslims and everyone together to kick out the British. You might have easily avoided them if you had approached the Guru as above mentioned. Srila Prabhupada is actually talking about, what is he talking about? He's talking about his own understanding at one time. You can see here. He was a follower of Gandhi at one time, right? Prabhupada talks about that in the conversations. If you hear all his conversations, in one of them he says, I was a follower of Gandhi. But when he met his spiritual master, he renounced the bogus guru, Mahatma Gandhi, and took the mission of Lord Chaitanya, or took the mission of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So Prabhupada is saying, you might have easily avoided them if you approach the guru as above mentioned. You can say, during 1920s and 1930s, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was present, the Acharya of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. So if he had approached such a personality like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, which Srila Prabhupada is saying here, he could have easily avoided the above mentioned severe austerities and penances. But your sincere efforts to attain some godly qualities by austerities, etc., surely have raised you to some higher position. which you can better utilize for the purpose of the absolute truth. So Prabhupada is saying, even though you have done all these unbona fide things, uh, it's better late than never. Right? You've been given some fame or this and that, why not utilize it? If you, however, remain satisfied with such temporary position only and do not try to know the absolute truth, then truly you are to fall down from the artificially exalted position under the laws of nature. But if you really want to approach the absolute truth and want to do some real good to the people in general all over the world, which shall include your ideas of unity, peace, and nonviolence, then you must give up the rotten politics immediately and rise up for the preaching work of philosophy and religion of Bhagavad Gita without offering unnecessary and dogmatic interpretations on them. I had occasionally discussed this idea in my paper, Back to Godhead, and a leaf from the same is enclosed herewith for your reference. Apparently, I guess Mahatma Gandhi wrote a commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, and Prabhupada is saying here, unnecessary and dogmatic interpretations on them. And Srila Prabhupada is saying that you must take a spiritual master, a guru. So we are taking the spiritual master's word and reading his words here in our reading of this letter, Srila Prabhupada's letter to Gandhi. I guess when Srila Prabhupada was writing letters to Gandhi, well, this one is the only one that's archived and recorded. He was sending him pamphlets or magazines, magazine papers, back to Godhead, a paper, in my paper, Back to Godhead. So Gandhi never cared to reply to Srila Prabhupada. I would only request you to retire from politics at least for a month only, and let us have discussion on the Bhagavad Gita. I'm sure thereby that you shall get a new light from the result of such discussions, not only for your benefit, but for the benefit of the world at large, as I know that you are sincere, honest, and a moralist. Awaiting early reply with interest. Yours, Abhay Charan Day. You know, we're having this wonderful discussions online called Istagosthi. Srila Prabhupada wanted this. You can see here. I request you to retire from politics at least for a month and let us have a discussion on Bhagavad Gita. So we're having these discussions on Zoom, and if you're watching this on Facebook or on YouTube or wherever you're watching it, we have our Zoom sessions Wednesdays, Saturdays, and Sundays officially. So I'll post the link in the message. If you want to join, you can join the group and then participate in this wonderful discussions. Prabhupada saying, oh, and let us have discussions on the Bhagavad Gita. So that's what we're doing. We're trying to have discussions, and if you want to be part of it, you certainly can. So let's recap. This is a letter from Srila Prabhupada to Mahatma Gandhi dated 7/12/1947. July 7th, July 12th, 1947. So thank you very much for listening. And if you have any questions, feel free to post, and then we'll take it from there. Hare Krishna.